So why am I doing this? I'm starting this podcast because we all have a story and finances play a part in our struggles and successes. If we can learn from the many mistakes many others have made, we can make sure that more of us are successful. Like the quote says, to increase the chances of success, we must increase our failure rate. To be honest, I failed a ton. I will bring people from all walks of life, but mostly service members. If you have a story you would like to share, do not hesitate to reach out. From the go, like and subscribe to this podcast so many others can benefit. All right, so for this session of the Financial Enabler podcast, we'll be interviewing the Cognitive Raider. You guys have probably seen him on social media. The guy knows a ton about tactics, knows a ton about the military, great experiences. So now we're going to try to capture what he's learned in his time, how finances plays into it. Maybe let's figure out some of his failures. What's up, dude? How you doing?
Hey, man. How you doing? Good to be with you. Honor, privilege to be on your show with you, dude.
Yeah, same, man. You've been a role model of the community for a long time. I think that we're taking it. Some people take it for granted the value that you're putting out on social media, right? Like even like this post of Grenadiers that you just posted the last few days blew up. Everybody reposting it. It's huge.
Yeah, man. I mean, everything I'm doing on there. Really, the mission of my page, I'm just trying to help people out, make them better. I've said it before on my bio, everything's unclass. I'm not sharing any crazy like TTPs. I'm not burning our methods. I just want people to be doing well out there. Hopefully they're taking my posts, my content as that's called a jumping off point for discussions they can have at work and things they can develop, once they're in the line of business over there.
That's huge. I see there was a page, the EOD shop. I haven't seen them in a while, but they were doing the same thing, right? And I think that we take that for granted, right? Because once if you post something about Grenadiers, there's people that are not Grenadiers or they're not thinking about that tactic, that method, that is going to lead them to look up to it and dive into it. And it's like, oh, maybe we should employ this. I know some young lieutenant somewhere is going to apply this, what you just posted, within the next 2 months. And it's going to be a game changer, making his people more lethal, which is really cool, especially as we start, things get hairier in the current environment, right? As we look at the Pacific and Ukraine, Russia, Iran. So it's all very interesting. So it's pretty cool, man. With that, what would you say, what was the launching point? What caused you to create the Cognitive Raider?
Yeah, that's a good question. Something that a lot of people might not know about the name for my page is that it's 100% stolen. So you're probably tracking this already. So Marine Corps Special Operations Command, MARSOC for short, in about 2018, they rolled out this new, I guess you could call it a planning document. It was called MARSOF 2030. And you can read about it online. It's not like top secret or anything, but it was just like, hey, here's the vision of what we want MARSOC to be by the year 2030. And it's a lot like the Force Design 2030 that everyone's talking about these days that the Marine Corps is doing. So it had 4 lines of effort. The Cognitive Raider was one of them. Like, we want our operators to be smart. The other 3 included MARSOF as a connector. So are we the kind of force that can connect the interagency and the joint environment together to achieve, I guess you could call it a whole of government approach. The third one was combined arms in the connected arena, essentially just looking at all the things that all these agencies are bringing to bear in that connected arena and trying to maximize the output from those. And then the 4th line of effort, which I actually think is more interesting than the name for my page, is enterprise level agility. The idea is looking at MARSOC's small size as a component as an asset that we can change gears and change directions quickly to new threats, new missions, new let's call it demands in the marketplace of foreign policy and national security. because we're small, we're able to accomplish these things. Whereas the bigger components like USASOC or NSW, they kind of already have a niche that's so deeply carved out that it's very hard for them to deviate from it. So in about 2020, this is in January of 2020, I made myself a New Year's resolution. I noticed I was spending a lot of time on social media, but it had very little impact. What's that?
Could you repeat that from 2020? It cut out for a bit.
Okay, yeah, I got you. So about the year 2020, I made myself a New Year's resolution. I had noticed that I was spending a lot of time on social media, but I wasn't really doing any good from it. It was just wasted time. And I realized like, hey, I could actually be doing some good things on here. So I had this idea of just sharing like best practices or ideas. I was in school studying philosophy at the time and just thinking to myself, there's a lot of philosophical tenets that apply to life and work in the military, and especially in special operations. So it would be cool if I could maybe share some of those things, and it could help people understand what they do on a deeper level, and maybe give them a little more information to orient off of when they're making their decisions. And I'm like, well, what kind of name should I give this social media page? The Cognitive Raider just kind of stood out to me. I'm like, yeah, let's try that. So that's kind of how the page started, and some of the ways that I'm oriented as a page, the goals I have, the mission of my page, just trying to make people better and help them to do better. I guess now's a good time as any. I am currently still active duty, as with anyone else on active duty who would be participating in a high profile event like this, like a podcast. They got to say like, hey, none of this reflects the official policy of the Marine Corps or any other government agency. It's all my personal opinion and observations. So that's kind of a rundown of who I am and what I'm doing in the social media space.
Yeah, and I think that, it's funny how guys like you, and I've said it before, Seamus Flynn, Blake Water, like all your pages were the reason for me to start the Financial Enabler. And, for me, it came out of like my moment of self-destruction. It's like, I need to do something good. I actually caused a lot of damage in my own relationship with social media. So on top of just wasting time. So it's pretty cool to see that shift, how as we get, doesn't matter how old you are, you got to mature a little bit. We needed to mature in our social media habits. And now we're able to do that. You leverage that information space for good. And I don't know if you recall last year when they took Blake, they took the communicator, the cognitive Marine to Headquarters Marine Corps, and they interviewed them. And it really showed that the Marine Corps is benefiting from our efforts, right? They're leveraging what we are doing because they can't stop this machine. So they might as well have us, we're not bots. We're not getting paid for this, but we are putting the service in a positive light. So
yes,
whether at work we're competent or incompetent, that is not the question. We put the service in a positive light, and we're able to drive with that. If we're competent, it obviously helps out because the reputation spreads faster, right?
Right. Yes. Well, and that's something that was a concern of mine because, we're kind of in this line of work and special operations. We believe strongly in the quiet professional and representing our communities well. And I told a lot of my friends, because basically if I do a live or like this podcast, anyone who knows me is going to recognize my voice and be like, yeah, I know that guy. So I told all of them, I'm like, hey, if at any point you think I'm doing a poor job representing who we are or our community or our line of work, you tell me, and I will adjust or I will delete this page and the project will be over. But everyone that I've talked to has given me positive feedback and said, hey, you're doing some good things for the community. And like you said, the Marine Corps sent out that invite to some social media pages to come to DC and hang out. Likewise, I mean, MARSOC didn't ask me to start my page. It didn't, like, I have no affiliation whatsoever other than being a Marine in MARSOC. There's nothing driving me from like the work side of things to do this. It's just me trying to do a good job of like getting our good name out there.
Right. And I think that that's something that I feel we're doing right. You know, there's plenty of communities that people have tried to get themselves in the limelight. And they've done it for self-gratification, and that goes nowhere, right? The reality is that we look at, I was talking this example to airmen just yesterday. If you and I would have been in the 1920s, we would have probably had a stand outside of New York City and been preaching about something, right? We would have teaching financial education. We would have been like recruiting for the Marine Corps, right? But either way, you have to put yourself out there to cause a change. So, you know, everybody always makes the jokes about SEAL books and SEAL movies, but go compete with that recruiting machine. You just can't. Nobody can compete with that recruiting machine. So
and I've said that 100 times. It's like the line to get into NSW is a mile long, and it's full of Ivy League grads and water polo players. So they're doing something right. And I think there's something to be said about, yes, you're a quiet professional, but you also need to do a good job representing yourself to the American people, to policymakers, decision makers, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are flipping their phones open to call you to do missions. And it's up to you whether or not, let's say MARSOC, in our case, are we on that speed dial list, or are we just not something they think about because we haven't been publicizing ourselves enough? And like you said, it's not a self-aggrandizing thing. It's not, hey, check me out, look how cool I am. It's about doing what's right for the work and the community. And essentially it's like, hey, I believe in myself. I believe in my organization and the good that we do. Let's put that out there and let people know, hey, if you need something done, we're the team that gets you the W.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting. I was just thinking of how we have to put ourselves in the limelight and how it causes that change. I just heard of a story when I was in Intrepid Spirit of a SEAL commander that had a friend in Congress. And because this friend in Congress or somebody that knew him, I don't know the exact story, heard about a mission, he called his SEAL commander buddy. And they got the mission. Were they best suited for the mission? Fine not. Did they have the right assets for it? I don't know. Irrelevant. They got it. And they kicked ass, right? And it was just right place, right time, right connection. You know, who would have thought, right? And then you go talk to some of our peers and like, hey, you need to go to Congress or you need to go this. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to post that. I'm not going to write a book. And it's like, maybe you should. You know, you're a worthy leader.
Wouldn't hurt. Yeah.
Wouldn't hurt, you know? And it's cool. And I'll say his name because he's retired now, John Bodema. A lot of people, you know, however you feel about him, to me, that dude was the man, right? And I'm like, I hope one day he writes a good book. I hope, because that dude is to me, he's the man, right? And, you know, it's funny. Right now, somebody is saying, I don't like Jaime or I don't like the cognitive raider, but there's somebody that likes us. And that's okay. You know, we don't need to, everybody needs to like us, you know? Yeah.
Well, and to your point, it's like, hey, bro, someone's going to be writing a book. And it's up to you. Like, every community has their shit bag. Like, do you want the shit bag writing the book? Because here I am, like, in like your case, talking to Bodema, it's like, hey, bro, I'm asking you to write this. Like, there's people who believe in you and your reputation. Yeah. And your input to the conversation it's being asked for because you're looked at as a valid, credible source for this stuff. And you'd represent us well.
Yeah, he's definitely the man. And, you know, I think, you know, he did great things for me, and I had a great time with his team. But let me ask you some financial things to try to tie it together. And I'm always curious because there's upbringing, right? I recently listened to Cody Alford's story, and it was very interesting how he always wanted to be a Marine, right? He always wanted to be a Marine sniper. and a lot of the formative years lead to decisions, and we take for granted what finance does to our formative years. So what are do you have any finance scripts that were put into you by your family, your environment, things like, the love for money is a root of all evil, like parents that were too frivolous or parents that were too stingy while they were wealthy? Like, what's your story with that?
I'd say I had an interesting upbringing, grew up in a religious family, 8 kids. I was the middle child, and my dad, he had a professional occupation, but he had the misfortune of finding himself unemployed for extended periods of time. And so money was tight. I mean, what are you going to do when you have a single breadwinner and he's out of work and there's 8 mouths to feed? It's stressful. I coined this term called post-financial stress disorder. If you're the kind of person who's ever had like financial troubles, it's like, hey, I've had multiple weeks where I had less than $10 in my checking account. It's like, go find out if that person thinks about anything else. Like, are they focused on their job? Are they focused on their family? Are they happy? Like, they are in a bad way. And probably the only thing they're thinking about is like, how am I going to afford to fill my car up with gas? How am I going to afford to like feed my family dinner tonight? And I saw this in my parents. And the main thing I thought to myself when I saw that was like, I never want that to happen to me in my family. I never want it to be so bad that, we're talking months. It might have been years. I was a kid at the time, so I wasn't completely clued into the bank account, but we did not have a lot to go around, and relied on charity. We relied on people taking care of us, which was great. But that frugal upbringing, and that upbringing of, I guess you could call it financial turmoil, kind of guided me. It gave me a bedrock for a lot of the good decisions I've made. Like, no one's coming on your podcast with a perfect record, but I will say the things I got right are because of my experiences growing up. So I would say some of my financial scripts, I got 2 big ones. The first one is, the best things in life are not things.
That's the best things in life.
Yeah. The best things in life are not things. Basically, like reminding you, like, hey, there's cool stuff out there. Like, there's things you want, but you got to remember like what the most important things in life are about. And then the other saying that I kind of grew up with is, live simply so that others may simply live. We catch ourselves in like spending habits that it's almost like you're competing with what you perceive other people's situations to be. And, you can make some serious mistakes, or get yourself in some serious trouble with that kind of attitude. So just like maintain a simple life, look for ways to, I guess, stay disciplined, keep things simplified, for the sake of, if you get too outlandish, too ornate, like you're basically putting too many holes in your bucket, as they say. I don't know if that's a good metaphor, because that's something I use when I talk to my wife about our finances. It's like, what's the condition of our bucket right now? If you picture your finances as a bucket where, it's got to be letting off water somewhere, because that's your buying food, buying gas, getting to work, putting clothes on your kids. But you also got to be filling your bucket, and that's your income. That's your work, your job, your assets, whatever's putting money into that proverbial bucket, you might say. And sometimes people are like punching extra holes in their bucket. They're getting the flashy new car, or they're going to do a home purchase in maybe an area that's outside of their means. Yeah. And it's like, you need to be able to conceptualize these things in a way that, I don't know, keeps you safe, keeps you from getting into those financially stressful situations. But that's basic rundown of what I got going on.
and I appreciate that because I'm gonna try. One thing that I've reason that I try to do this too, and I'm gonna tell you my most controversial purchase for people like us is guns.
Yeah,
To me, is like I get it. I get it. People can argue all day 2A to me and how you need more guns. Got it. But can your bucket sustain that other gun realistically? And I'll challenge people is like, great, you're preparing for something, but are you prepared to create generational wealth? What if nothing happens, right? So I always debate that, and I don't want to tell anybody to not buy or buy more guns, but look at your bucket, right? And you bring in something really important, right? The post-financial stress disorder and how it affects everything in finance. And I'm trying to highlight to people, and this is one thing because I always say that in my time in MARSOC, I was not known for being the best EOD tech in the unit, but I was known for being a guy that took care of dudes, right? And as you look at taking care of dudes, finance is important. Generally speaking, a well-fed Marine is a harder fighting Marine, right? So finance plays into our lethality. If you're so concerned about how you're going to feed yourself, can you truly go to the range and kick ass? Probably not, right? So
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
very interesting to me how, like, you know, and we see it all the time. Some guy that is stressed out because his wife, because his kid, because his parents are in a situation. So I really try to create that. And one thing for the audience is that here it is, a guy that is bona fide, accurate and positive representation of our communities that has overcome this. And that's something I try to highlight. Like, our failure, something, the key theme in my podcast is that here it is. The cognitive raider has dealt with this. He has had to overcome it to become this. You can too. You will too, right? So that's why we need to share our faults. But it's very easy to look at your page and be like, oh, he's an overnight success. No, which is not the case, right? So
It's always been easy for me, Jaime. You know, it's
always been easy. Yeah. Red carpets, right?
yeah. Serious.
With that, what are some unconditionals for you when it comes to money? What is something you will always spend top dollar on, or you will always carve out money for it?
You know, that's an interesting question, and I think I've matured quite a bit over the years. You brought up earlier, like, guys trying to get the nicest guns. For me, I used to be the dude who was like, I need the nicest gear and you know, like a good chest rig or a good plate carrier, and those things seem to be a pretty penny. And I've noticed that's a fallacy for a lot of professions, trades, hobbies. This idea that, like, I have to have the best things in order to be the best at this. You see it, I was just talking with a buddy of mine recently about golf, and you see it really bad with golf. Guys will be like going to get the nicest clubs, and he's getting them fitted, and it's like going the extra mile to like really get good golf gear. But it's like, bro, like, you could accomplish the same level of proficiency for a much smaller price than what you're putting into those things. And that's something I had to learn about with the old Denier Cordura nylon items that I've been buying. It's like, you know, you don't need the fanciest, nicest, most trendy pieces of equipment to be really good at what you do. Like, a lot of times what you're issued is actually sufficient to accomplish those things. So I would say that's my old unconditional spending. But like I said, I've matured since then. My new thing these days is my kids' extracurricular activities. That is like a pretty sizable portion of my budget these days. I got a daughter in gymnastics. I got 2 boys in jujitsu. My daughter wanted to do jujitsu as well, and I'm like, sorry, you can only do one big program. I can't be putting you in 2 things because, you know, we got a scarcity of resources here, and if we're doing that, like, we're eating nothing but PB&Js for dinner. So that's my big one now. Like, I want my kids to have the best when it comes to their activities, their learning, their experience and upbringing. and I've spent for things like I mentioned, jujitsu and gymnastics. I got some of my older kids into equestrian lessons at one point. Luckily, we didn't stay in those for a long time because you want to talk about expensive hobbies. It's like, that's killer. But like that, I'm not saying it to like toot my own horn, but I feel like that's a pretty justified expense to be going in for.
Yeah. And let me ask you this. So if you found yourself back in the conventional forces, would you be buying gear for yourself, or you would just use what you get issued for sake of funding your kids' extracurricular hobbies?
Oh, so if it was a trade-off, it's like, hey, I'm going to, let's say, for example, Ukraine or Taiwan tomorrow. Like, I need to have like good stuff. And it might mean like, sorry kids, while I'm deployed, you're not going to be doing gymnastics or jujitsu. I think it would just, I'd stick with what's issued. Or one of the other tricks I got is all this old stuff I used to buy it's still going well because I maintain it. Buy once, cry once, and I've been taking good care of it. So it's still in the game. But yeah, like 100%. I think now that I've, like I said, I've matured a little bit and learned a little bit about our craft. I see the ways that it's like, hey, you can make things work with either stuff that's free or stuff that's per sale cheap, or you can buy it at an Army Navy store if you have to. There's a lot of cool sources for this stuff. And then, maybe you can make that part of a plan if you have a very nice piece of gear that you're trying to get.
I just lost you for a second. That you were saying something about a nice piece of gear?
Yeah, sorry. My mother-in-law started trying to call me, and it was buzzing right on the desk.
Luckily, we have the awesome marketing team that is just going to chop this up.
Good guys. We'll take it.
Awesome people.
So like I was saying, I think you also have to be ready, and this goes out to, the audience and some of my followers. I know they want to have quality equipment, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I would tell them, like, you don't have to buy it all at once. If you're the kind of guy, like, I want a Faro Concepts plate carrier with cummerbund and all the pouches, it's like, that's good. That's awesome. You don't have to buy that all in one go. Like, you can slowly add to your kit over time, especially if you plan on making this a career. That might be a good move, is like making a plan of like, how am I going to spend to start acquiring kit items to round out my equipment issue in a way that works best for me. And that's probably good advice in any front. Like, let's go back to the golfers who might be listening. Like, you don't have to get all the clubs in one go. Like, there's smarter ways to do this.
Yeah, and it's I always laugh, and now being in the joint service, right? My school's joint, and I see it, and I see EOD Technician All Force services all the time. And oftentimes Marines are like, man, we should get issued better gear like MARSOC. And I'm like, dude, go to the conventional Army. They're struggling, right? And there's nothing they can do, right? So it's like, you can go spend top dollar. And one of my funniest debates, and I remember you were probably there still, or we're getting issued the AVS, and people complain.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not perfect, but it's fine. It's fine. You're whatever. You'll be all right.
Right. And if you're smart, you can modify it too.
Yeah.
No, that's a fact. I have buddies who went from conventional Marine side, and now they are in the SEAL teams. And it's funny because they'll tell me about their buddies over there who, the Navy SEALs is all they've ever known. And they'll get issued, their basic like NSW gear issue. And they're like, this stuff is like not that good. Like, there's way better stuff out there. And my Marine buddies who grew up with like the Interceptor vest or like the Marine tactical vest, like that monstrosity, they're like, bro, are you serious? Like, we get an amazing, like, not only do we have an awesome issue, they gave it to us in multiple operating areas, camouflages. Like, When you're a Marine, it's all just tan, bro. Like, cause we only got money for one set. So yeah, it's like, be grateful for what you have. Live simply so that others may simply live, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a big one, right? Because I feel they throw money at the problem, and the problem is not going to fix it with money. Well, good tactics, good understanding of the gear is really the key to success, right? So yeah, with that, has your military experience, your training in MARSOC, a deployment, has anything ever taught you a lifelong lesson that you could tie to finances?
Oh, totally. The big thing for me, and I've been reflecting on this lately, is the financial domain, I guess you could call it. It's kind of its own operating environment. And you got to know the terrain. Right now, the terrain is things like the economy, the current state of inflation. These are things that, they're challenges, but the good thing is, like, in a spirit of competition I might be in the marketplace, in the economy, everyone is subject to these conditions. And there are, I guess you could call it, two different mindsets when it comes to warfighting. Simplified, the most simple version of calling it, you might say it's on a spectrum between attrition and maneuver, where, and most Marines who are listening are familiar with this, because our warfighting philosophy is that, attrition warfare is just a simple numbers game. Like, I'm going to go up against the enemy, and if he has 10 guys, I'm going to bring 11. And everyone's going to shoot one person and kill him, and in the end, my one guy will win. That's like an example of attrition. Versus maneuver is like, hey, you have 10 guys, I'm going to bring 5, but I'm going to flank you with 3 of them while 2 of them are suppressing, and those 3 are going to roll up your entire force. And in the end, 5 guys on my side will win. That's a super simplified way of putting it. Like, we break this thing down into a system, and we try to think, what is the smartest way to hit this thing? And for me lately, something I've been reflecting on with people in the military who are getting into like the financial realm of doing things need to understand that it is a maneuver space. And like any maneuver you do on the battlefield, it's going to entail some risk. There are going to be losses. There's going to be moments you're exposed, but there's also great opportunities, great chances for benefit if you stick with it. One example that I've been reflecting on too, like, let's not kid ourselves. We probably have an audience that, if it's all active duty guys, or a great proponent of active duty guys, they're dealing with paychecks on the enlisted pay scale, maybe some junior officers out there, typically like an lower class to, would you call it like an upper middle class income scale. And, that doesn't give you a lot to work with. But if you look out for ways that the financial operating environment is getting to you, the enemy is causing attrition in your ranks every time you go and buy an energy drink from the PX when you can get one for cheaper at the commissary, or if you buy it in bulk at the commissary and it's way cheaper, or if you just kind of get over your need to drink energy drinks and you quit, and that's money in the bank. That's like a daily purchase you're no longer making. I mean, if you make a $3 energy drink purchase every day, that's $15 a week. That's $60 a month. And now that's $60 in your pocket. That'll cover half my daughter's gymnastics right there.
Right. And if people want to have big wins, and kind of to your example of attrition versus maneuver now, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a post about it, attrition and maneuver finance. I'm going to come up with it. We're going to craft it. Is that people want to win in the finance game, right? They want to win in the finance game through attrition, throwing more money at it. When in reality, we could be winning with the maneuver. And there's somebody out there right now, there's an E3 and any other services, maybe even in a sub, an E3 doing the right things. As a matter of fact, I spoke to one, a recon Marine.
Oh, yeah?
This kid is rolling in money. And he is outmaneuvering the entire finance game. And I'm like, he is going to kick ass. But all these other people want to have, six-figure incomes, when in reality, you could do it with $900 a month. $1,800 a month in this E3's example, right? Living in the barracks. So it's how you use your assets right to maintain your victories in the operating environment. And then I'll tie this one, that this is one of my big thoughts, is that people, when they budget, I'm not saying budgeting is bad, but I believe that budgeting is being in the defense. You're just taking all the hits post-action, right? Well, I try to be in the offense with my finances. It's like I need to strategize where I'm going to spend. Granted, you have your known expenditures, and then you take it on. You take on the operating environment, right? But too many people are just sitting there waiting to get hit with the next emergency, and obviously it's much harder to react at that point, you know?
Yeah, well, and to take the analogy even further, we have different levels of warfare, right? The strategic, operational, and tactical. And me going to work and thinking, I could really go for like a Bang or a Zions, and thinking, no, I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to save that little bit of money. That's like a tactical action on my part,
right?
Versus sitting down with my wife and drawing out. And this is something I've done, and I could go into it deeper. Drawing out what your lifeline looks like for the next 10 years. And it's like, here's what we want to be doing. Here's when I expect promotions. Here's when I expect changes in duty assignment. Going all the way forward for 10 years. Where do we want to be in 10 years? Where can we picture ourselves? And that's like financial strategy. And then everything in between, all the intermediate term goals of, hey, we're going to pay off this car. We're going to refinance our house, etc. Those are like your operational maneuvers of trying to maximize your positioning in this financial operating environment.
Dude, you just gave me like 10 posts.
I'm a machine with this stuff, man. Like I churn them out. So
that's awesome. So that's good, because now we can do it together. Because again, people try to. I was not about the brilliance in the basics when I was in MARSOC, because I didn't understand the value, right? It took me leaving MARSOC to actually for it to hit me. But what we're talking about is brilliant in basics, right? These simple things are the things that are going to make us great financially and are going to make us great in the operation environment, right? As war fighters, right? So it really carries over, because any way you cut it, we're dealing with an adversary. We're dealing with our own centers of gravity. So how do you use what you have to continue to win and not get outmaneuvered and end up homeless in Albuquerque, which is a bad look, right?
Yeah,
kind of whatever. All the homies, right?
Yeah.
Wow, this is really good stuff, man. So you said you draw that timeline for your family. What are your goals that you're, obviously without, maybe you don't want to disclose too much of who you are, but what are some goals that you have for 5, 10, for your family, for your kids?
Yeah, so obviously want to be looking at major events that you see coming up and get those on there. Before you start overlaying your goals or the moves you're going to do, you need to put on the things that you know are going to happen no matter what. Like for me, I put how old each of my kids are going to be throughout this timeline. I put how many years time in service that I have, because that gives me input on when I'm planning to retire. Like there's certain year marks I got to hit if I'm going to rate my retirement pays. I'm putting in a look at like my units situation. It's like, hey, when is our workup over? When are we deploying? When will we come back from that deployment? Start working those things in, including when do I think I'm going to get PCS'd? For those not listening or who don't know, permanent change of station, PCS. It's like you get transferred in the military. And a lot of the times, like these things happen by surprise. You don't really see them coming, but most of the time it's something you can forecast. So you get those things on there, and then you can start really playing with it. Like, okay, I don't know what month I'll be promoted, but by this month I should be, whatever the case is, a gunnery sergeant or a captain, whatever you got going on.
Right.
And you put that on there, and you can start forecasting like, okay, that means extra pay. Also deployment, there's going to be things like per diem, there's going to be hostile duty pay, all the different pays that might happen during deployment. You start sketching that in for like, hey, we're going to see a little bump these months. And maybe that gives me some decision-making space. So once you have like the foreseeable events forecasted, you can start playing with like what your goals are going to be. And this can look like anything. Like for anyone out there, it might look like, hey, I'm going to start exploring like a new asset, or I'm going to buy a home for my family. That's a big one for a lot of guys in the military. They want to be able to, you start off in the military, you're typically renting if you're married and not living in the barracks. You're looking at like, hey, I'd like to have a place to call my own, some place where like, I have a little more incentive to patch up the drywall if I put a hole in it, because it's my drywall, things like that. So you start making little goals. I'll say for me and my family, and this probably gives some more context of my situation. My family, I've got 4 kids. One of them is a special needs kid. He's got autism. And I think it would be really beneficial for him if one day I could be able to buy him a horse. Like if I could get him into horse riding, I think that would be really good for him. It'd be very therapeutic for him. So that's like a little goal that we made for ourselves. It's like in the next, let's say 5 years, we'd like to be, one, living in an area that would permit it, or 2, having circumstances that allow it. Are you losing me again?
But yeah, I lost see the video for a second. I don't know why.
Okay. Do you need me to turn it off? Would that help?
Yeah, probably. Let me see if I can draw. I mean, I wonder if it's probably because I'm recording it in the highest quality.
Oh, there you go.
Wow, but I don't right now.
Oh no, I'll be honest. Now that we're in a little segue moment, like I've been having a little trouble hearing you as well. You can kind of
really
out just a little bit. I've been able to piece it together, thankfully, but
yeah, same. And I'm surprised that you know what is actually way better now that we turned off the video.
What the heck? What's the deal with that?
No, I don't know. Let me see 1 second.
I guess less data. I should know these things. I'm an MNOC grad, so.
You are? Yeah, you should know things.
Yeah, shame on me, right?
But
I mean, it makes sense. Like, you want me to shut my camera off? Would that help with the audio, do you think?
Yeah, let's try that. Yeah.
All right,
cool. So, okay, so go back to that. So you're saying you're going to buy you want to buy your autistic son a horse, right?
Yeah. Like that's a big goal for us. Like it'd be really cool if we could have our own horse, and that would be his therapy of doing a little horse riding. That's like a neat thing that we'd like to do. And I guess that kind of brings up another point, because I know we get into financial discussions. You brought up earlier, like guns. You mentioned, I listened to your first podcast. Like you said, like people have goals for like cars or fishing equipment or a snowboard, whatever the case is. Like it's like, far be it from me or anyone else to tell someone like, don't spend your money on that. Because at the end of the day, it's like you're saving this for something. You're not just going to be like Scrooge McDuck with the money bin. Like you're not doing this podcast so we can all swim in the money. It's like we got to spend it at some point, and like that's where, in my mind, going back to like the analogy of like it's an operational environment, and like my finances can be likened to a military operation, because I'm belt fed, and that's the way I think. I think about like, okay, this resource, what is it for? What is the drive in my life for my family? And I'd say like our mission is we are trying to raise good kids to be good people. And the main effort in that mission is not me. It's not my job or my career. It's my wife, who she's, this isn't saying anything about anyone else, but my wife is a stay-at-home mom. She kind of has to be because of our situation with our special needs kid. She's not able to go out and get a job and make us a dual income family. And that's a challenge for us, because it's a dual income economy, really. I don't know if there's any other way to shake it. Like it puts my family at a disadvantage that it's a challenge that we have to figure out a way to surmount. But at the end of the day, it's like the reason I'm trying to make this money and the things I'm trying to do with it, it's for my family. And for anyone else out there, it's like you figure out your drive, you figure out your mission. What's the goal? What's the end state for this financial capability that you're trying to enhance? Because it's, like I said, you're not just trying to swim in this stuff, and you probably don't want to like spend it away frivolously. You got to have something that's like an enduring, profound incentive for you. And for me, it's like, it'd be really cool to be able to, like I said, I spend unconditionally on my kids' activities. Like that gives me a lot of fulfillment, being able to send them off to learn cool stuff or to have cool experiences.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's a great goal because it's that important to him, I'm sure, and to you guys. So I drive a lot on goals, because the more I talk to the wealthy, and I didn't bring that book here with me today, is that they really focused on goals, right? And I'll go back to this because it's a perfect example. Cody Alford, when he was saying, I want to be a Marine sniper when he was a child, right? People probably thought that he was crazy, right? But he was so focused that it happened. And that's how the wealthy see it, right? They're thinking, I will have this money, this success goal, and they drive through it, not at cost of their family, but with a lot of energy, right? So it's very interesting to see that. And what were you doing with your son? Which I'll ask, have you taken him to the horse therapy in the general? I don't know if you're in Camp Lejeune or you are, because with Marsac.
Yes.
Have you taken him to a horse therapy in Marsac that is in just north of Jacksonville?
So I haven't had a chance to do that. His last experience with horses was when his older brother and sister were doing equestrian lessons, and he would kind of just go and like experience it a little bit. But he was still kind of young for that stuff back then. But that's definitely something that we'd like to explore going forward. And I know they have those programs, and Lejeune has like these big stables, and I see him sometimes when I drive by. I'm like, I don't know. I always figured it was for like colonels and stuff. So I'll probably have to look at.
There's this guy. I'll send you the link. There's this guy in Jacksonville that does horse therapy. They took my Intrepid Spirit group there. Mind blowing. I don't think I've ever seen a group of adult men so shocked at how valuable something could be. We were like, what just happened? It was awesome. So I'll send you the link because it's that good. Yeah. And if you're
I'm going to check that out. That sounds awesome.
Tell people. Yeah. So let me ask you, what would you say is the best financial advice you ever got?
It's, I don't know if I could encapsulate it with just advice, but I would say I have two role models for, my finances. One is I come from a lot of like soft experience. My brother-in-law is a Green Beret, and he's so financially savvy. Like, I'm just like keeping an eye on that guy and trying to emulate a lot of the things he does. He's like constantly maneuvering in it. And like, I'll say it's like his spending capacity like far outweighs like his pay grade in the military. It's like he's doing an excellent job. So I think everyone has role models like that. My other one is a friend of mine. He's actually a SEAL up in Virginia Beach. And he's just a smart guy. He's well read on it. He's been invested, I guess you could say, academically in this space for a while. And like, it's like those two dudes, I'm like, man, like they really give me something to shoot for. They're setting such a good example of Like what discipline looks like, what sound and wise financial maneuvers look like, and it really gives me something to strive for. So I'd say, like, not best advice, but like if they give me advice, I listen to it.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. What is the worst advice you've ever gotten?
Whew. Again, it's like, it's not so much of what people have said to me, but it's looking at people who, if we could liken it to maneuvers again, people who overextend themselves. Like I talk to some folks who they tell me like what their car payment is. And
yeah,
I'm like, bro, I don't know how you're doing that. Like, cause I know we're both the same pay grade and we both have like 4 kids and a family, and you're telling me your car payment is that much. And I don't know what I would do if, it's like 2 or 3 times what I'm paying for my vehicle. And I'm like, bro, like, I don't know what you're doing over there. It freaks me out. Like, keep your head above water while you can. But
keep trying. Keep trying.
Yeah. And it's one of those things like, it's just like, I think about being in that situation, and it's like I said, the post-financial stress disorder starts kicking in again. I start having flashbacks like, no, like that ain't it. Like I'm not going down that road. So
yeah, that's good. I like that, because you have it's not even the single moment, it's the role models, both negative and positive. And I recently heard this, that we become who we are, not in spite of people, but because of people. And to include the negatives, people try to act like, I'll never be like my father, right? Or I'll never be like my whoever, right? But in reality, who they were either caused you to be worse, or you took a 180 degree and you're totally opposite. So either way, you're because of it, right? So we have to accept that, right? And I generally think, I'm not talking about anybody's parents and whatever, but generally, I tend to default that most parents did their best they could. It's now just on us to continue to do our best, right? And take those lessons and provide for family a little better, right?
I actually had that conversation with my kids recently of like, I'm like, hey, my mom and dad, like, they weren't perfect. And I realized that at some point. And I was telling my kids, like, one day you'll realize all the ways I messed up. And when you do, be better than me. Like, I did not give my parents enough grace. I'm asking you to give me grace, because I should have done that for my parents. And you can be better than me if you do that. So, but maybe it's a little self-serving. I'm like, hey, come on, cut me some slack, even though I didn't do that for my parents. Yeah.
As you pack your bags to go on a 10th deployment, give me some grace, but I'm out of here.
I'll see ya. Yeah. Good luck, babe. Let me know how the kids are doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, man. That's pretty cool, man. That's I like that a lot. Like, because we got to pay attention. And again, it goes back to the point of this podcast, right? Pay attention to the role models. Pay attention to the people that are disasters, right? Because you can benefit from it and really do better for your life. Do you have any final closing comments? Because, dude, this was way better, like, than what I thought it was going to be. I think we need to dive into. We almost need to have like and I'll say it right now, the Financial Enabler Handbook, right? Kind of like a radar.
Oh, that'd be cool.
But like finances with military concepts.
I think
again
that'd be cool.
PFSD,
I'd get that book.
PFSD.
Post-financial stress disorder. We're like, we need to raise awareness, man. We're having the post-financial stress disorder 5K on Saturday. Like, come donate some money, because we're gonna give it straight to these people.
Yeah, and that's how we do it. The faster you run, the more money you get.
Yeah. I'd say, just if we're wrapping up right now, I would just like bring it back, like sit down. For those of you who are individuals still, or if you're married, sit down with your spouse, make that lifeline, that life timeline. A buddy of mine calls it his life TEEP. TEEP stands for Training, Exercise, and Employment Plan. It's basically like a unit's forecasted plan of how they're going to work and what they're going to do. do that for your life. Like, figure it out in various domains, like for your work, for your family, for your kids' goals and where they are at in school. Start trying to forecast what's going to be happening, and give yourself like periodic checks on that thing. Like, look at, hey, back in 2020, where did I say I would be by 2024? Am I still on track? Do I need to adjust my expectations, or do I need to adjust my actions to meet up where I was planning? Maybe I should plan something different. Have I gone in a different direction? I think that is a super beneficial move people could do. It's just like, hey, try to chart this stuff out so you're navigating relatively familiar waters when you get to that point. And then I would also say, one thing I love about your page, because you're also one of my role models, it encourages me to step into the financial maneuver space with a little more bravery, with a little more, let's call it awareness. I can orient on my decisions a lot better now, thanks to your example, the example of my brother-in-law and my buddy. It's teaching me, like, I can just stay over here in my little attrition warfare. I get set amount of income and I have set amount of expenses, and I'm not trying to make any gains. Or I can try to make a couple maneuvers here and there and really see some advances for me and my cause, which is, like I said, trying to raise my family to be good people. So that's all I got for you, Jaime. Thanks so much.
Dude, that is the greatest of causes, and I really thank you for that. And this is way better than what I thought it was going to be. It's really exciting, and to talk to you in person for the audience. One thing I'm gonna start, and I think I already told you, is that I'm gonna be doing shout outs to either a brand, a unit, or a movement. Right? In this case, I have the 30 EOD Company shirt, which is the best Marine EOD company. All the other ones are not it. So if you have a unit shirt, send it over. If you love it, it's special to you, I'll send it back. I realize that our time in the military is actually really special. And the more that we honor it, like you said, give it grace to the imperfections of the service, the imperfection of our leaders. I think that most are trying to do well. Some of them are not good at it, but whatever. And we got to represent it in a way that is positive and that we can enjoy it. But dude, this was freaking awesome, and I look forward to having you on again.
Amen, man. Thank you so much, Jaime. It's been an honor.
Yeah, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Later.